Hello everyone, so today we have a lot of interesting stories in the AI industry to cover, starting with an AI researcher at Google who gives a controversial take on AGI and the current state of progress. Next, we have Elon Musk dropping the lawsuit against OpenAI only days after they announced their partnership with Apple. And finally, I wanted to talk about the current state of the robotics industry because it's really starting to heat up, and I think we're going to start hearing about it a lot more soon. So Dwarkesh Patel had Francois Chollet, an AI researcher and software engineer at Google, on his podcast recently, and they spoke about the current state of AI, specifically LLMs and their limitations, but also a bit about AGI and the progress we're making towards it. So we're going to cover a few of the key moments from this podcast, and just a disclaimer, you might not like what this guy has to say. He does have a more unpopular opinion, but I think it's important to listen to views that may be against our own in order to challenge our current beliefs. So I'm going to show you guys a clip in a little bit where Francois is talking about ARC, and if you've never heard of ARC, I don't blame you. I haven't either until today, but the ARC benchmark or ARC challenge is a unique benchmark created by Francois back in 2019 designed to track progress towards AGI. So the idea of this benchmark is that you can't use memorization to solve it, so you need a sort of general intelligence that Francois argues LLMs just don't have. And to be fair, there hasn't been an LLM to pass this benchmark yet, even though it's seemingly very simple and the average human scores upwards of 80% on it. So as you can see here in this example taken from the ARC challenge, it gives us 3 examples of inputs and outputs, and we have to determine what the output will be for the test input. So it's relatively simple. It looks like we just have to fill all the enclosed spaces with the color yellow, but LLMs struggle tremendously with this because each question in the ARC challenge is designed to be brand new. The reason for this is to combat memorization and force the models to use generalized reasoning skills instead of just sifting through the immense data they were trained on to find the answer. Francois argues that LLMs not being able to pass this test is a sort of proof that they rely heavily on memorization and what they were trained on. And when put into a novel situation, they don't have the adaptability and general intelligence that humans have, at least not yet. So this is of course up for debate, and they go a lot deeper into it in the full podcast, but here's the clip of Francois talking about ARC and what it tells us about the current state of AI.
I think benchmarks that gain traction in the research community are benchmarks that are already fairly tractable, because the dynamic that you see is that some research group is going to make some initial breakthrough, and then this is going to catch the attention of everyone else. And so you're going to get follow-up papers with people trying to beat the first team and so on. And for ARC, this has not really happened because ARC is actually very hard for existing AI techniques. ARC requires you to try new ideas. And that's very much the point, by the way. Like, the point is not that, you should just be able to apply existing technology and solve ARC. The point is that existing technology has reached a plateau. And if you want to go beyond that, if you want to start being able to tackle problems that you haven't memorized, that you haven't seen before, you need to try new ideas.
So he's stating here that LLMs have reached a plateau and that it's going to take a different type of architecture to get us to AGI. Now, I can't say I completely disagree with him here. I do believe that we will need a new architecture along with LLMs to achieve true AGI, but to say LLMs have reached a plateau is simply untrue. Just because we haven't seen much progress since GPT-4, which by the way was finished training in 2022, it doesn't mean that progress isn't being made. Companies like OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, etc. are all in a very competitive race towards AGI, fueled by billions and billions of dollars, and for that reason, they've started to publish less and less of their research in order to protect their intellectual property. On top of that, there are a lot of safety concerns regarding this technology, making companies even more hesitant to publish. This is something they talk about briefly in the podcast, and Francois has a really interesting take on how OpenAI has affected the current state of AI research, and I'll talk about why I disagree with what he says after, but here's the clip.
I think that's actually really sad that frontier research is no longer being published. If you look back, 4 years ago, everything was just openly shared. Like, all the state-of-the-art results were published, and this is no longer the case. And it's very much, OpenAI single-handedly changed the game. And I think OpenAI basically set back progress towards AGI by quite a few years, probably like 5 to 10 years, for 2 reasons. And one is that, they caused this complete closing down of research, frontier research publishing. but also they trigger this initial burst of hype around LLMs. And now LLMs have sucked the oxygen out of the room. Like everyone is just doing LLMs. And I see LLMs as more of an off-ramp on the path to AGI, actually. And all these new resources, they're actually going to LLMs instead of everything else they could be going to. And if you look further into the past to like 2015, 2016, there were like 1,000 times fewer people doing AI back then. And yet I feel like the rate of progress was higher because people were exploring more directions.
So I could see where he's coming from when he's saying that by OpenAI closing up their research, it's causing the progress towards AGI to slow down, but I don't think he's looking at the full picture here. OpenAI has arguably done way more than any other company has in increasing the progress of AI research because of all the attention they got for ChatGPT. This made AI more mainstream and is what started this whole AGI race, allowing for billions of dollars in funding to flow into AI research. Now, I would agree that LLMs are perhaps getting too saturated and we probably don't have enough people working on finding new architectures, and OpenAI becoming more of a closed-off company is likely not a good thing for AI research, but at the end of the day, if it wasn't for OpenAI, we probably wouldn't even be talking about AGI right now. So another guy who isn't too happy with OpenAI right now, I'm sure you all know who I'm talking about, Elon Musk. He has recently dropped his suit against OpenAI only days after they announced their partnership with Apple. Now, I found this a little weird because he had some interesting things to say about Apple announcing their partnership with OpenAI. He tweeted that it's an unacceptable security violation and that he would ban all Apple devices in his companies if they were to go through with this. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think of this. Are his concerns legitimate, or do you think he just has a personal vendetta towards OpenAI because of everything that happened in the past? Anyways, moving on to robotics, and speaking of Elon Musk once again, he was recently streaming when one of his viewers asked about the future of Tesla's Optimus, and here's what he had to say.
Yeah, Optimus will be able to pick up the kids from school, and Optimus will be able to be school if you want. We'll be able to teach kids anything. Yeah, it'll support any language too. Humanoid robots will usher in a level of abundance that is hard to imagine. There will be no shortage of goods and services. The price of Optimus. Optimus will be. Ultimately, I think Optimus. It's probably like $20,000 or something like that, maybe 30. And volume production, Optimus, the parts in Optimus will cost less than a car. So I think probably long term is probably $20,000, $30,000. Long term, I think there'll be more. The ratio of humanoid robots will be more than 1-to-1. So there might be 2 humanoid robots or more, maybe 10 for every 1 human, which means, well in excess of 10 billion humanoid robots.
So this may seem like a very ambitious projection of what the future will look like thanks to robotics, but based on what we've been seeing recently in the robotics industry, it seems like it's really starting to take off and we're on the brink of something incredible. Optimus is already being used in certain Tesla factories, and the range of tasks it can do is only going to get bigger. We're also starting to see a lot of new players pop up in the industry, especially from China, where they're making a lot of progress with humanoid robots. They recently had the first ever humanoid robot to climb the Great Wall of China, RobotEra's XBot-L, and it didn't make it all the way, but this is still pretty impressive. Another recent demo we got was from CMU Robotics, where they displayed their teleoperated humanoid robot OmniH20. Now, this is interesting because this is a humanoid robot that's designed to be operated by a human via virtual reality. If you think of the potential use cases for this once this technology gets better, it can be extremely helpful for people who are disabled or even old people whose bodies just don't work like they once did. I can see it also being useful for workers to potentially replace doing dangerous but important jobs that we might not trust robots to do autonomously yet. Another cool thing I wanted to show you guys is this clip from a group of researchers who wanted to test out what would happen if they trained the humanoid robot to drive. They did write a paper about this, and I'll link it in the description if you want to read it in full, but the TLDR is they got it to successfully drive the car, and some of the benefits they noted is that because of its flexible body structure and movable eyes, it's able to interact with the environment in a more human-like fashion. The reason this is good is because cars and roads were created for humans, and so having a human form factor actually allows the AI to better understand and control its environment in that situation. It's important to keep in mind that the clips I just showed you are all from relatively small startups or research groups that have only recently begun doing this. So if we're taking a look at the current state of the robotics industry in general, we have a lot of big name companies like Nvidia, Amazon, Boston Dynamics, to name a few, that are working on robotics, and now we have a bunch of new startups popping up left and right, making progress that only a couple years ago would be completely mind-blowing to see. What this shows us is that the robotics industry is really starting to take off, and I can only imagine what this next few years will bring as more and more small players start to catch up to the bigger names, which in turn accelerates progress and incentivizes companies to find more cost-efficient ways of creating these robots. So that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to stay up to date on future AI news, make sure to hit that subscribe button.